Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hi there, and welcome to Side Quests. I'm Louie, and today I'll be talking about the game that's often said to have saved the Nintendo 3DS, Super Mario 3D Land. This game has a very special place in my heart, and in a way, in my career. Oh, and who am I, you ask? Well, I'm Louis Dozouet, and I've been developing games professionally for just about 20 years now. And Super Mario 3D Land was instrumental in the development of one of my games. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Like many folks my age, my love affair with Mario started back in the 80s with the release of Super Mario Bros. On the NES. I think it's hard for those who grew up with more modern games to really get just what a revelation Super Mario Bros. Was at the time. Now, if Super Mario was a revelation, then Super Mario Bros. 3, released in 1990 here in North America, was like the second coming. The game was so jam-packed with mystery and surprise. So many secrets to uncover and power-ups to find, a veritable treasure trove of delights. Truth be told, Mario 3 to this day remains my favorite of the 2D Mario games. Yes, even more than Mario World. Now, don't go writing angry comments. I know full well that my nostalgia for those early experiences playing the game have a lot to do with my bias. So don't take it as gospel or anything. But we aren't here to talk about a 2D Mario game, we're here to talk about a 3D Mario game. So why am I going on about Super Mario 3? Well, that's because I kind of fell out of love with the Mario games as they transitioned to 3D. Don't get me wrong, I was absolutely mesmerized by Mario 64 when I first played it. It felt so huge, so full of possibilities. But as someone who didn't own a Nintendo console and couldn't put hours and hours into mastering this newfangled 3D gameplay, you know what else I felt from Mario 64? Left behind. Complex controls along with the temperamental camera made navigating these new open environments rather frustrating, and the new exploratory structure of the game meant it always felt like I was spending more time trying to get to something fun than I was spending actually, having fun. I've gotten over most of these hang-ups over time, but I've had countless conversations with non-gamers over the years that have reinforced this impression that Mario 64 alienated many players with its departure from what folks had known from previous Mario games. Which is where the game in the title of this episode comes in. Super Mario 3D Land. In 2011, the world was introduced to a new kind of Super Mario game, a sort of hybrid between previous 3D and 2D games in the series. The game was in 3D, sure, but the game's structure harkened back to the 2D games by having players make their way through set courses complete with a flagpole as the goal. The moveset seen in Mario 64, Sunshine, and the Galaxy games had also been reduced, though it did retain some of the fancier footwork like wall jumps, backflips, butt stomps, and long jumps. The camera was also directed, always showing the player what needed to be seen at the expense of full freedom over the viewpoint. These changes all came together into a game that seemed to be pulled straight out of an alternate timeline where the previous 3D Mario games had never existed, like answering what would a 3D Mario game look like as a direct sequel to Super Mario 3. Core to Super Mario 3D Land's identity is how it pulls from both the series' 2D and 3D roots. Many of the elements associated with the previous 2D entries in the series have made the jump to 3D Land. Probably to address the lack of finesse of the 3DS's circle pad, 3D Land includes a run button. Power-ups also make a return, and with them, the return to Mario having no hit points to soak up damage, instead falling back on the old formula of Mario losing his power-up when hurt. As previously mentioned, levels are linear courses with a flagpole as the goal at the end. These courses are also distributed among different worlds, each ending in some kind of boss fight. All familiar stuff to any fan of the classic Mario games. Heck, even Koopa shells regain their bouncy behavior, along with their propensity for bouncing right back at you. As I mentioned, power-ups make a return in 3D Land, giving us a rare look at how some of our old 2D favorites behave in 3D. A new potential projectile is also added to Mario's arsenal in the form of the boomerang flower. A neat new alternative to the fire flower, which is perfectly suited to the 3D gameplay, as the thrown boomerang travels out and tracks back to Mario, hitting everything on the way out and back. It can even be used to grab pickups like coins. When it comes to power-ups, though, the star of the show is, without a doubt, the Tanuki Leaf. cementing Super Mario 3D Land's status as the alternate reality sequel to Super Mario 3. This power-up extends Mario's jump and improves air control while also granting you a 360-degree attack, which functions really well in 3D. Oh, and it has Mario change into an adorable Tanuki suit, so that's a plus. But of course, Super Mario 3D Land was not, in fact, conceived in an alternate timeline in which Mario 64, Sunshine, and the Galaxy games never existed, and their legacy can also be felt in this little 3DS gem. Obviously, the available moveset is directly influenced by preceding 3D games, though it has been simplified and tightened up. Structurally, we see an adaptation of Super Mario Galaxy 2's Comet medals in the form of star medals to collect. Also, many level gimmicks first seen in the Galaxy games also make a return in 3D Land. In fact, the greatest influence from the Galaxy games, especially Galaxy 2, on Super Mario 3D Land may very well be the core principle by which its levels were designed. This guiding principle is based on a traditional form of story structure which breaks down the narrative into 4 acts. In the context of the 3D Land levels, this is expressed as first introducing the player to the level's particular gimmick in a low-stakes way, then ramping up the challenge to test the player on these new skills, only to remix the challenge by introducing new hazards or twists, and finally giving the player one last low-intensity challenge leading to the goal in order to prove their newly acquired skills. As previously mentioned, this approach to level structure was first applied in force in Mario Galaxy 2. The game shared several key team members, after all. And this 4-act structure allows for a variety of short levels, perfectly bite-sized bits of fun, well-suited to a handheld platform. What's interesting about this variety is that you feel it across each of the game's worlds, rather than in the levels themselves. What I mean is that each level has a singular setting and only features a few gimmicks like bounce pads, particular enemies, or certain hazards. Though this leaves each level feeling like it lacks variety, overall, it keeps the game feeling fresh, as most new levels give you something new to learn and master. By only using part of their toolbox in each level, the designers were able to make the game as a whole feel varied. This desire to mix things up is also seen in the world design. Unlike many similar games, the different worlds in Super Mario 3D Land feature a total hodgepodge of level themes. This does leave the worlds feeling rather haphazard in their theming, but it's all in the name of keeping the levels fresh. One criticism that could be easily leveled at the game would be that given its pedigree, it can feel a little uninspired. But I don't know, I kind of like that about it. It's stuff we've seen, but in a new format, you know? It feels new and familiar all at once. And let's not forget that we had only just started being bombarded with Mario nostalgia bait back in 2011. Okay, maybe not just started, but we weren't at today's saturation point. And having had distanced myself somewhat from the series at the time, Super Mario 3D Land, to me, felt like a welcome return to form. In fact, an aspect of the game that attracted me to it was that it felt like a smaller production. As a handheld entry in the Mario series, it does feel like the team was given limited resources to produce the game. This led to a less ambitious title, no doubt, but also, in my opinion, to a tighter product. 3D Land succeeds at being a smaller scale, more focused, yet solid and varied offering. A fantastic example of making the most of limited resources. And I do have a soft spot for games that aim for quality over quantity. That's not to say the game feels lacking in content or anything. In addition to the main 8 worlds, there's a whole set of special worlds to test your skill after completing the main quest and rescuing Princess Peach. You can even unlock Luigi as a playable character, complete with his signature slipperier acceleration and higher floatier jump. Even though this extra content is made up of a lot of remixed courses from the main worlds, it still delivers on the added challenge I feel Mario games have become known for when it comes to their post-game content. Though post-game content is only one way Super Mario Land does a good job of offering a variety of challenges for players of different skill levels. Take the game's 8 main worlds. For the most part, these courses can all be completed without the use of any power-ups and without using any of Mario's fancier moves and jumps. If, however, you want to collect all the star medals, you're going to have to attempt harder platforming challenges or explore off the beaten path. I love this. It's integrating difficulty levels right into the courses themselves, allowing more novice players to make progress on their terms while giving them something to strive for as their skill increases. Finally, I want to talk about the game's presentation. Stylistically, 3D Land once again marries the looks of its 3D and 2D predecessors. In terms of modern Mario games, it sits firmly within the current polished Mario look. Thing is, it still looks good thanks to this solid art style. Rather than push the 3DS's rendering capabilities, the team opted to use tried and true graphical techniques to deliver a clean, bright look that, though simplistic, still looks great today. I would say the same of the audio side of things too. The music wonderfully updates classic tunes where appropriate, while delighting with catchy new pieces like the infinitely hummable main theme that is, dare I say, almost as catchy as Super Mario's iconic Overworld tune. Almost. Sound effects also make the jump from the classic systems to the 3DS wonderfully. Everything from the coin pickup to the power-up transformation sounds are spot on in recreating the original sounds from the NES games while updating them for new hardware. I hope you can tell just how much I love this little game. But as mentioned at the start of this gush fest, Super Mario 3D Land holds a special place in my heart not only as a player, but also as a game developer. And as the SideQuest podcast is all about us sharing our special connections with the games we love, let me tell you a bit about how this often overlooked little 3DS game ended up defining years of my professional life. It began with a strange fixation. 3D Land's directed camera seemed like a perfect solution to one of my main stumbling blocks with the previous 3D Mario games. Here was a 3D Mario game that always seemed to show you just what you needed to see. Well, this strange fixation developed into a prototype, which developed into a full-blown obsession. Even before buying a 3DS of my own, I pored over Let's Plays of the game, trying to pull apart its design as I continued to toil away at my camera and platforming prototype. When, about a year later, I had the chance to devote myself to the project full-time, I was able to begin turning it into what eventually, with the help of fantastic publisher Noodlecake, became Suzy Cube. Basically, what if Super Mario 3D Land, but that played great on a touchscreen? I ended up spending 3 years working full-time on the game, and it's been my most successful game by a good margin. If you're curious, you can check it out at suzycube.com, available on Steam and mobile. Well, there you have it, Super Mario 3D Land, a wonderful twist on both the 3D and 2D Mario formula of old. A game that so captivated me that I just had to spend years on a study of it that turned into a full-fledged game in its own right. And, beyond bringing me hours of smiles, 3D Land turned out to reignite my love for Mario games in general. I adored Odyssey and played the crap out of 3D Land's sequel, 3D World, both on the Wii U and Switch. Even though 3D World's inclusion of co-op play did mean the game had to use a much more static camera, which is a bit of a shame. So yeah, Super Mario 3D Land reignited a love of Mario I hadn't felt since I was a kid, and a love of platform games in general. I know it took some flack for not following in the footsteps of the more open-ended 3D Mario games, but I loved it, and I continue to love it for what it is, rather than what it isn't. And on that, I've been Louis Dozois. Thanks so much for listening, and happy gaming.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too, until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
And Jacob McCoy.
with many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Crossplay Conversations debuts on August 1st with brand new episodes hitting every other Tuesday. Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers and happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.